Today, we will be hearing from women writers, some from the Black Arts Movement, as well as new and emerging writers. Let's welcome our Black female writers.
My name is Elaine Brown, and I've been arbitrarily selected to be the moderator of this panel, whatever that means. But I'm going to take advantage of that because I'm old enough to remember the beginning of the Black Arts Movement. I'm just going to be 1 minute or a minute and a half to sort of set the tone for the whole question of the Black Arts Movement, because it wasn't just, this wasn't a so-called hip-hop movement where everybody got something to spit, you know. People were actually advocating for change. And so one of the great poems that comes out, sort of the seminal moment in the Black Arts Movement, is Leroy, then known as Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka's poem, Poems That Kill, right? And if you don't know it, just go look it up, because you should know it. And so the whole question of the Black Arts Movement followed the so-called Black Power movement, which was to talk about the resistance to oppression, to the rising up based on Malcolm X's call for, by any means necessary, the rising up of black people with armed self-defense. So let's not just get into a mamby-pamby conversation about somebody who could write a poem. Huey Newton wrote poems, Erica Huggins wrote poems, I wrote songs, we all did it. We didn't say we were artists who happened to be black, and we didn't say we were blacks who happened to be artists. We said we were revolutionaries who used art as a force to encourage, inspire, advocate for, and so forth. So that was the tone we in the Black Panther Party set for ourselves. So I did 2 albums of songs that went to that, but we had a newspaper that was published, and that's part of that. And we had books and art by Emory Douglas and other artists that were in the Black Panther Party, but we thought of ourselves as revolutionaries who used our art to advance an agenda of freedom. So that's the tone that I would like to set, because I believe that was what the purpose of the Black Arts Movement in coming together was, to set the tone and the language for us to think of ourselves as fighting against oppression toward the concept of freedom. Now, we have fallen so far behind, and I'm not even going to talk about, people like Common saying that he wanted to be he's mad about Eric Garner, but he don't want to disrespect the police. I don't even know what that's about. So, but today or yesterday, whenever they had the NAAC Image Awards, NAACP, whatever, had the Image Awards, they gave an Image Award to Clive Davis. So this is for black art. Remember, the NAACP Image Awards have to do with, acting and singing and whatever else they have to do with. But I want to say that we've gone so far backwards. We so happy to be on Master's TV Plantation. We love him so much that we're now celebrating him for our awards, right? So it's a sad moment. So I just hope that we can reflect back on what the purpose of the Black Arts Movement was and begin to figure out how we can use art in a way that can inspire, encourage, and advocate for the kind of change that brings us a freedom, recognizing that we remain oppressed as black people. So, voila, next person. Everybody do your thing, and then that's it for me, the moderator person. So, okay, I want to say one last thing. I'm so proud to be on here with my sisters, because we do have a sisterhood, whether we recognize it or not. But we are not involved in the anti-male piece. We're involved in the sisterhood, and we are together. And I'm even though I don't know these sisters per se, I don't have to, because we know we get it.
That's right.
And I'm very proud to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm Halifu Osamare, and I didn't start out as Halifu Osamare. I started out as Janice Miller. A lot of you don't know that who know me. But I go back to the Black Arts Movement as well. I was at San Francisco State when a lot of it was jumping off. The student strike that happened there that changed the whole education system in terms of ethnic studies and black studies in particular. I was there when Amiri Baraka and Sonia Sanchez and others came to the Bay Area to kind of share with us what they were doing on the East Coast. And for a very, very short time, an institution in San Francisco was established called the Black House. And the Black House had revolutionary theater. Ed Bullins, Jimmy Garrett, and others were doing their new-found drama, talking about the change of consciousness that was happening in the black community. There were musicians coming there to play at the Black House in the new free jazz style that the Chicago Art Ensemble was in the forefront of. And I, as a young woman, basically just got out of high school, decided that because I was into dance and a dancer, I was gonna add dance to the mix. You know, revolutionary improvisational dance. You know, that was gonna be at the moment, telling it like it is. And, you know, really, that became the beginning of my career. And I performed at the Black House along with people that were playing music. And it was a real exciting time because it was the first time that we were really kind of taking our art into our own hands and defining it for ourselves. And definitely what Elaine said about that time set up a kind of model that we are still dealing with today, that we're riffing on, you know, in the decades to come after the late 60s and early 70s. Because I became Halifu Osamari in '73 when Ntozake Shange, who wrote For Color Girls Who Consider Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, came to the Bay Area from Southern California, had our own radio show at KPOO, and again, the mounting ferment of art and speaking our minds and defining ourselves was continuing out of that black arts movement, even though the movement per se had kind of dissipated. There were constantly new artists and new generations that were continuing the dialogue with the community. And she came into town with some of her poems that eventually became For Colored Girls, and she said, "You need another name." And and she researched it, and by the way, Halifu means the independent one in the family. So I kind of lived with it for a little while and said, oh yeah, I think this is me, and I've been that ever since. Now, majority of people don't even know Janice Miller. So I just want to say that I continue that in my own career and development in terms of becoming a cultural activist. And I am the founder of what is now the Malonga Cascade Lord Center for the Arts in Oakland, which is the Center for African Dance and Music. So I'm very proud of that, I went to Ghana, you know, which is another part of my own personal self empowerment and development. And when I came back, I said, we got to do our own thing. Oakland has too many black people in here who need to know their culture. And you know we love to dance and play music, just like you were saying, but we need to control the mechanisms that we reward ourselves by. And definitely keep those who are the plantation masters out of that system. So I'm just saying that the beat continued after the Black Arts Movement was set in the late 60s. It continued in many institutions that are going on right today in new forms. And the Malonga Center that I helped facilitate and start is one of those mechanisms that are right here in Oakland. And you know, like I said, the beat definitely goes on. Now I'm teaching African American Studies at UC Davis, writing books on global hip hop. So, you know, the beat never stops.
Great, good afternoon. Really I'm happy to be here with my sisters and with all of you, and a real deep thank you to Marvin X for persevering for so long here in this environment called Oakland, which has many, many good things to it. So my name is Judy Juanita, and my birth name is Judy Hart, if you will, and I was born in Berkeley, and grew up in Oakland, in East Oakland, on East Lawn Street. Some of you may know that street. It's kind of a stone's throw from where Felix Mitchell's empire was created. So I grew up in the 69th Village. So I grew up in East Oakland and went to Oakland City College in the 60s. And that's what my book is about. It's about the path of what I call the female foot soldier in the movement. So I was a student at Oakland City College where I first encountered Huey and Bobby, and would just listen to them on the lawn, listen to them and listen to all of the radicals who would be on the lawn. I wasn't listening to be indoctrinated. I was listening because it was interesting and it was hot and it was better than being in class. But I was really determined to get out of Oakland City College and transfer to San Francisco State. So I did transfer to San Francisco State, but this was the 60s, and it was so much fun, and there was so much going on every single day, sit-ins, be-ins, nude-ins, smoke-ins, everything. It was just an extremely exciting period, and at that point, I knew Janice. I always have to remind her, I know you as Janice. And she said, when were we Janice and Judy? But that was back at San Francisco State. And we were part of this movement that changed the Negro Student Association.
Right, exactly. I was a part of that in the beginning, the Negro Student Association.
to the Black Student Unions. All this is in this book. And then my roommates and I did something very radical. Huey and Bobby came to San Francisco State recruiting for the Black Panther Party in the spring of '66, just like IBM and Clorox. They came to a room like this. They had sign-up sheets in the back. They did their spiel. And my roommates, I'll pay tribute to them, Joanne Mitchell, Betty Carter, who is deceased recently, Janice Garrett Forte, and Evelyn Proctor, all joined right at that moment. I, however, had these civil service parents who said, you know, never sell your soul, never sell your body, and, you know, never sell out your country, this kind of thing. So I hesitated for a minute, but that was the 60s, that was the summer of '66. The urban riots were in full flame, and by August, I was a member also. So we were the first 5 people and students to join the party from San Francisco State College. And yeah, it was so many things developed from there. We also, most of us came back to the college as, in effect, members of the party on campus. Some of us had gotten married to Bernard Stringer, and I married a man named Clarence Thomas, Buzz Thomas. Not the
Thank you for clarification.
no, not that one. The real Clarence Thomas. Okay, and all of us then used all what we had learned as members of the Black Panther Party to start the San Francisco State strike, which was the longest strike in student history, in academic history. It established the Black Studies program, which then expanded into ethnic studies. And so open enrollment and Black Studies started from San Francisco State. And then it spread like wildfire again, okay? So I think that's kind of enough history.
Hi, I'm Portia Anderson. I'm Portia Anderson. I was born in the early '60s, so I didn't get a chance to witness firsthand what these wonderful sisters were talking about. But of course, I was totally politicized. What'd you say?
I said, what you trying to say, we old?
No, I'm saying queens. I know. But I was totally politicized by what had occurred during the '60s, of course, the early '70s. I was thinking about yesterday evening about what helped to politicize me. Of course, the Black Panther Party, the Black Arts Movement, Nikki Giovanni, Gil Scott-Heron, just, so many different writers and people, and the Nation of Islam, listening to a lot of that, read a lot of that. So there was so much that informed my writing throughout the years, and short stories in high school and newspapers. But in 1969, there was a babysitter, and I'm from Seattle, my parents came up from the South, and she could not watch us for one particular time, and her brother did. Well, her brother was really cool. He was wearing this black tam, and really cool brother, and he was dipping out ice cream, and we were just, I know I was in awe of him. Well, well, he was a member of the Panther Party, and he was killed. He was assassinated in front of his mother and his sister. And I remember her being so traumatized by it, so traumatized. So I looked it up, and his name, we called him Butchie Armstead. Forgot his first name, but they took that brother out. And from then on, I think that was the blossoming and the beginning of my questioning what was going on with our people. I always did, because where I grew up in Seattle, they would call you a nigger right away to go back to Africa. So I wanted to be real clear about what happened to us and how do we challenge it. How do we resist how we challenge it? So I grew politically, I'm continue to grow politically in my writing, but I think that was what was occurring during that period of time definitely helped politicize me.
Hotep. Shalafia ni shedadani atupoyo. I am Favia Kuchi Chagalia. My dad named me Favia. People used to ask me what my name was before that, and I used to say, it's always been Favia. I didn't know people changed their names. But when I did find out, and Marcus Garvey said that we should have African names, I changed my last name, because my last name was the last name of one of our enslavers. Got rich off of that, and I refused to even say the name out loud. But I looked at the principles of Kwanzaa, and I thought the most important one to me was self-determination, because you can't even get out of bed with self-determination. Right. You can't practice none of that unless you got self-determination. So my name is Favia Kuchi Chagalia. We know that anytime you hear that PH with the F sound, that's Greek. I'm not Greek, so call me by my African name, Kuchi Chagalia, please. I grew up in the 50s in Hunters Point, child of San Francisco with the riots, and I was always inspired by everything that was black, because I did a lot of reading. My mom was an educator. And in doing so, I learned about a lot of things that I wanted to participate in. Although my mom wanted me to be a Catholic nun, I wanted to be a Black Panther. Okay. Can you see the difference in that? So you know how that household was looking. So I decided that I needed to do something to change the world. And one of my heroes was Thurgood Marshall. I decided I was going to be the first Supreme Court justice, a black woman. And I was in college at age 16, because I knew I had a long way to go. But when I found out that the law has nothing to do with justice, I got rid of that. And I found that there was more power in the arts, in the spoken word, music, poetry, and dance. Some of the most powerful moments in my life and the lives of a lot of our youngsters is the moments that they feel and experience when dealing with the arts. So I know that we are at war. And because we are at war, my bullets, my weapon are my words, because words are the most powerful weapons on the planet. That's why we have been denied our language. And that's why we have been given a language of racism and white supremacy that we must constantly deal with and face. So in the process, although I taught at Stanford University ethnomusicology, African civilizations, one of the things that I'm most proud about is teaching in the Department of Corrections, 20 years, San Quentin Prison, Folsom, Soledad, Pelican Bay, you name it, I was there teaching. And it is of that I am most proud, because it is there where I did some of my most revolutionary work. Because, as you know, after enslavement capitalism, after the 13th Amendment, not the Emancipation Proclamation, after the 13th Amendment ended enslavement, the prisons became the next slave yard plantation. It's no accident that the majority of people who are incarcerated are African American, and for the most part, a lot of us, as Harriet Tubman said, we don't even know we're slaves. So many of us cannot be freed because we don't know we're addicted to white supremacy. That's right. So I focus on white supremacy, because the minute we are free of white supremacy, we can return to building pyramids as we used to, and we can return to our great African culture. So I am so honored to be here with these great women. with these sisters. And I never forget, Sister Khalifa. I'm almost in tears. And we were up and down San Francisco State University. I was there, and she was coming down the staircase. We all had to go up and down that staircase, and I was coming up. And she said, "Sister, you got to get your PhD." And I'll never forget those words. And I told my children, as my children grew up, I said, you can't stop going to school until you have at least one PhD. So one of my daughters is working on her PhD now, and you'll see her in the panel a little later. The other one's working on her master's, and I'm still working on mine. Ironically, when people recognize your skills and your talent, Stanford University called me and said, "You are the only one with this information. Would you please come teach here?" And that's how I got there. So basically, I noticed that because we are so steeped in white supremacy, usually we do not acknowledge each other until our enemy acknowledges us. Because we are sick. We are addicted to white supremacy. We are really a dysfunctional family. And we have got to heal our dysfunction. And as soon as we realize we are sick with white supremacy, we can make that healing occur at exponential rate. And through the arts, spoken word, poetry, music, and dance, that is how we will heal ourselves. It is a healing force that cannot be stopped. That's why they have taken over our industry, and that's why we must continue. I mean, people used to always tell me, "Sister Coochie Chocolate, it's not the 60s anymore. Your stuff is too angry." If you're not angry, you're confused. Everyone should be angry, and we should be using that anger to heal our people. So I currently write for the San Francisco Examiner online, and they do something really slick. The minute that my article is posted, they post it immediately to Facebook. People acknowledge on Facebook, so it is not acknowledged by the Examiner. So when you read those articles, you must post your comment on the Examiner page, or it doesn't count. They do that on purpose to make sure that we are not validated. So we have got to start validating each other. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, my sisters, for being who you are, making me who I am, because I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aris Marie Ella Jordan, and I'm honored to be on this panel of historic women writers that have made history, are making history. And I just want to acknowledge, just my reservations, like when I saw I was going to be on the panel, because I, just in my own moment of self-doubt said, how do I even qualify to be on this panel around Black arts movement? And I'm young, I only got one book, and I got a zine. But then I had to reassure myself, and my mentor always talks about passing the baton. Passing the baton, like what does that mean to pass the baton? And that's me sitting here and, being willing to share my story and know that I do qualify, even though I may not have been born in the 60s and, or the 50s or...
You are where you're supposed to be, sister, right now.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and just, being grateful to be here. And as everybody spoke of using writing as a tool, and for me, just growing up, I'm originally from New York City, my family is a hardworking family, but not so much on the consciousness. So I had to go and seek that out, the consciousness. My family is hardworking, will teach you about self-esteem, but the consciousness I had to seek out. So I think that I represent the link of, young people that's reclaiming their legacy that may not have been a Black power baby where, your family is, this is our history, where I had to seek that out. And writing has been my tool for healing and, expressing what's happening in my life and also being critical about what's happening in the world. So not just writing for myself, but representing young people, representing young women, our perspective at this time, and continuing with the legacy of the Black arts movement of using creativity as a tool for liberation. So I'm grateful and I'm honored to be here and contribute to the discussion. Thank you.
I have this arbitrary duty, as I mentioned, but I think, you know, we talked about, you know, art as a tool, but one of the things we always used to say, and this has nothing to do with back in the day, I just happened to be born. I was a cocktail waitress no more than 2 years before I joined the Black Panther Party. Everybody didn't come out their mother's womb black, and anybody tells you that they did is lying, because we living on a plantation, and we still living there, and all of us tried to be white and still are trying to get a job in the white man. We don't own nothing or control nothing, so you ain't got nothing to say, because if we weren't still oppressed, then we wouldn't even need you to say anything, and we would just be up here being elder people with our little histories and our little vignettes and all that stuff. But this stuff is active and it's real and it's now, so that ain't got nothing to do with, there is no generational gap, because we are continuously oppressed. I want to pick up on this theme of self-determination, because that you spoke about, Ms. Favia.
Coochie Chagalia.
Yeah, well, I know about Chakalia, but I also know that we used to say words are beautiful, but actions are supreme. So what I want to talk about is, if we're talking about self-determination, we don't produce our own stuff. We see these Negroes on TV, and we see all this other stuff. All of you are writers, so I would hope that each of you would just say one thing about what you've written, because of time constraints, because we didn't talk about your writing. I've written 2 books, one of them called, the last one called The Condemnation. One is about me, because when you're young, you have to still identify, blah, blah, blah. And the second one, though, is about a young brother who's been in prison now for 18 years, was incarcerated as an adult at 13, called The Condemnation. So we need to write stuff and use this art for the purpose. And I would like for you guys to talk a little bit about your books, your writing, and to inspire other people to maybe start asking questions, because a lot of times, a lot of young people say, well, as this young sister said, well, she wasn't there, but we were just there because we were there. We just happened to be born. It wasn't no special, like I didn't grow up, oh, Malcolm X, you know, no. I was running around, you know, I told you I was a cocktail waitress 2 years before I joined the Black Panther Party. You had to get conscious, and part of getting conscious is to hear people, right? So I was influenced by a brother named, in terms of the artistry, I thought I was going to be the Black Emily Dickinson. That's how pathetic my life was. See, you have to acknowledge stuff so you can acknowledge your growth, right? Keep it real. You keep it real. Don't sit up here acting like you was always Hooby Boo, right? So you're part of the effort that it's an ongoing effort. Just like, you know, we're here as sisters. Ida B. Wells Barnett. I mean, how can we say we stand on her show? Well, we do. We have to keep the fight going. That's your job, because it's your time, right? Just remember, you holding down the big piece right now. We've gone on the other side. So I just want us to, each of you, to talk something about our work and how, you know, what the meaning of these words and things that you've done. I've written songs, you know, and I hope that if I wrote songs, one theme was we have to get guns and be men. I like to write songs like that. So anyway, I've written songs, I've sung songs, I've used art in every single way that I can, and I think that that's important for you to recognize, but also to, when this sister tells you, well, she's a book writer and she's a professor, but she also was in the 1968 San Francisco strike, which was George Murray, as you guys know.
He was a good friend of mine.
And he was then the Minister of Education of the Black Panther Party, and that was the biggest student strike. Now students worrying about, are they going to get their student money, scared to sit in, scared to do anything. All they got is wear a T-shirt, I am Trayvon, Black Lives Matter, but they ain't making no movement, you understand? So, it's on you, sis. It's on you more than any of us in this panel. We look to you. We look to you. And so you're not only a part of it, that's not even an issue. It's just a non-issue. So I'll ask all of you, I've written A Taste of Power. I've written a book called Condemnation of Little B. And I've written 2 albums of songs. One of them called Seize the Time, that has a big AK-47 on the cover with the hands of a sister that has nail polish on. So that's we have to use art, and anytime you have your art, but it can't be used just for you and your friends to get applause and all that little whatever. We need self-determination, because we need to control every single piece. So lastly, you know, we talk about what the white man does. We already know what he does. I am absolutely convinced. I get it. It's his house. It's his world. He ain't getting up in the morning worrying about us, okay? We getting up in the morning worrying how we going to live in his world. But we're not worried about how we going to develop our own world, and that is the sense of self-determination. And how can we begin to control the messages that and broadly distribute our messages, given that we're living in a time when NAACP will give an award to Clive Davis as an Image Award because he discovered Whitney Houston. So everybody tell about your work and what you're doing.
Well, I mentioned that I started off as a dancer choreographer, and I always saw dance as text. I saw dance as a way of speaking, not just as a way of, shaking my behind and always getting down, but to actually use my dance to say something. So when I mentioned that I performed at the Black House, and I was really into dance improvisation, I saw that I was like another musician with those who were, playing their horns and creating the polyrhythms on the trap drums. I was right in there with that dialogue with my body. And that's the way I saw dance. And so when I went to West Africa to discover the roots of black dance and danced in villages with my brothers and sisters there and learned traditional Ghanaian dances, and I felt empowered to come back to Oakland, where I had lived before going to Ghana, and I could have joined the larger dance world and did my thing within that, but I said, no, I need to start my own institution. I need to start a cultural center that speaks to me and speaks to my people that the whole community can utilize. Therefore, I started Everybody's Creative Arts Center in 1978 after coming back from Ghana, living over there for a year. And then that grew into, by the 80s, City Center Dance Theater that was on the second floor of the current Malanga Cascade Lord Center for the Arts, where all the African brothers and sisters from the continent, the Caribbean brothers and the South American, Brazilian brothers and sisters started hearing about and coming here. That is why you have so many African diasporans and Africans teaching their culture in Oakland, is because we started that center. Yes, I was the catalyst. But I couldn't have done it by myself. It was a collective. And I literally put together about 6 of my friends and said, we got to do this together, because I will be in charge in terms of, helping to make decisions, but I know I can't do it by myself. So I always saw it as a collective effort. And even though I left as the founder artistic director in '88, I saw that I had started something that people needed, the community needed, and that they had begun to bring their children, and their children began to feel that they needed it. And so that's why it continued, because it really became a part of a need that was satisfied in the community. And if we begin to think about starting our own institutions, however small they are, we truly can become more self-determined. But I also realized, as I said, dance was my medium, that I wasn't gonna be able to dance forever. Like right now, I got arthritic knees and, I can dance in my mind. But I realized I needed to go back to school. Yeah, I see my sister saying, yes, sister, amen, I understand. I knew I needed to go back to school, because remember I said I saw dance as text. I was educating through my expressive bodily movement. So I was always interested in educating. And when I went back to school, got my master's at San Francisco State, and then went on and got my PhD in American Studies. And so I began to take what I understood about dance through my body and to begin to put it on the written page. And because I was a scholar by that time, and I needed to write academic books that got me tenure, all that kind of good stuff in the plantation systems of our universities, I decided I was going to write about something that was going to be meaningful to my community, not just to the academic scholars. And that's why I started writing about hip hop, because I felt like my generation were creating a generation gap between the hip hop generation and the baby boom generation, and I wanted to bridge that gap. And so my first text is The Africanness, Aesthetic, and Global Hip Hop, where I researched Hawaii, Russia, Japan, England, and France, and showed how they were using African American hip hop culture. And my second book, published in 2012, was the hip life in Ghana, West African indigenization of hip hop, and showed how our brothers and sisters in Africa are being influenced by African American culture. And in fact, what has been going on since the Atlantic slave trade is what I call an arc of mutual inspiration between the continent and us. So that's what I write about.
So I don't know if I have a book in me or I can sustain that sort of attention, but a lot of my work over the years has been recently writing for the San Francisco Bayview newspaper and as an intern for the San Francisco Bay Guardian. I had an opportunity to reclaim our art when one particular article was asking me to write in the Bay Guardian to talk about the early hip hop movement. When I interviewed this brother, he was so happy that I got it. And I got it because it's in my spirit. I understood the early hip hop movement. I understood what informed it, and don't necessarily like how it's been commercialized. In fact, I don't like it at all. So it might be able to write about the arts, whether it's a musician, a singer, a jazz artist, Sonny Rollins, wherever it was. It's important for me to be able to reclaim it, to write about it accurately as possible, and to talk about something that we produced out of our soul, out of our experience. So also too, over the years, I've written poetry. I didn't bring any with me, but it was an opportunity for me to talk about Black love and Black consciousness. And I think that's really, really important. Thank you.
So I started as a journalist and was always writing on school papers when I went to the city, Oakland City College, and also when I went to San Francisco State, I hated the student paper, and I thought it was very racist. And I had been a journalism major at language arts major at the AA level, and I decided that I was through with that, and that it was too white and it was too uninteresting. So, but however, I still had the writer in me, and so actually I got involved in writing for the Black Panther paper, the Intercommunal News Service, when I don't know if I got the dates right before, but it was spring '67. And then I wrote for them and worked with Eldridge and Kathleen on the paper. And each one of us in the house, we had a different function, and sometimes they called us the Sisters with Skills, you know, so Joanne was officer of the day, Betty ran the office, Evelyn took care of finances, and Janice was Bobby Seale's scheduler and secretary. So I worked with the newspaper. After the shootout in West Oakland, when Eldridge and Little Bobby were involved in the incident where Little Bobby lost his life, pretty much the next morning, the Central Committee and those of us who were involved with it, we had a meeting in Mosswood Park, and I detail that in the book. But I was so amazed because we had a tape recording from Huey, who was in jail at that time, and Huey basically reorganized the party since Eldridge was going to be incarcerated for we didn't know how long, and he said, and so I want Judy Hart to be the editor-in-chief of the paper, and I looked at Buzz, my boyfriend then, and I was kind of overwhelmed. And he said, she's a good sister, and I remember her work from Oakland City College, you know, when I used to work on the paper, and I would search out guys like Marvin X. I did a big feature on Marvin Jackman when he was there, and Isaac Moore, and all these guys, yeah. So at that moment, really, the writer in me developed. It was kind of like shedding the transient, a Buddhist term, we're Buddhists. I just became a different person. I certainly didn't know it until many years later, but my consciousness changed, and when I was in there writing for the Black Panther paper, and being the editor as I was for that time period, we'd be sitting there printing. We would do, it was kind of like, I forget what it's called, but we'd print out the headlines, you know, set the type practically. And those words were going through my life, off the pig, you know, all power to the people. You know, it wasn't until many, many years later that I was able to look at that phenomenon and understand what Sartre said, Jean-Paul Sartre said, that the oppressed take the tools of the oppressor and turn it on them. The oppressed learn the language of the oppressor and turn it on the oppressor. So Off the Pig, I maintain then, had a wonderful, and I go into it in the book because the young lady in the book has to explain it to her aunt and uncle. Why do they use those terms, the pig, you know, so forth. But after centuries of being referred to as baboons and coons and other animal terms, simply because of our physical characteristics, here, Huey and Bobby had come up with this term, pigs, to describe bestial behavior, not physical characteristics. So it wasn't to say off the pigs, and now of course it's passed into language, rent a pig, you know, this kind of a thing. It's not a racist term, it's a term for behavior. So those lessons were lessons that we learned when we were your age. And it colored everything that we did, so that those of us who went through school at that time, yes, we became writers and teachers and so forth, but we had a different consciousness.
That's right. Beautiful.
Okay, so my book that I have is Journey to Womanhood, and I like to say womanhood is not a destination, but a journey. So sharing my journey and just discovering, and I also added a poetic rite of passage of, I started writing as a way to heal myself, to work through my relationships with my dad, who has been addicted to alcohol since I was born, since I can remember, and kind of working through those things and also giving commentary on what's going on. So my first book of poetry is a rite of passage for me, of moving from just being in a space of pain to seeing how that can be transformed into something, a tool of healing. So that's what my writing focuses on, mainly my spiritual journey, which is a collective spiritual journey, and honoring my pain, honoring all of my emotions, everything that I'm going through, everything that I've seen my family and my community has been through. And my latest zine book is The Evolution of a Poetic Goddess, which is moving from this rite of passage of just talking about womanhood. I just had a baby who's 3 months, legend, Muhammad. So just the evolution of just not, as Elaine talked about, just not writing to write, because of course, there's so many people, especially in the Bay Area, that can write, that can perform, but transforming that into more than just, okay, people are gonna applaud, okay, people are gonna buy my book because I am a New York hustler. But moving beyond just selling a product to actually going deeper and working on my spirituality and seeing how this can benefit my community. And I just want to touch on about the publishing, because I'm always encouraging people to self-publish. I learned that from my mentor, who, you know, I just thought one day, like, oh, one day when I'm in my 40s, I'll publish a book. That's on my bucket list. And then he says, what is your excuse? There's no excuse for you not to publish your book. And just with so much technology that's available, and even looking at the Black arts movement, and you look at some of the material, it's straight from the printer. Yes. It's not with the glossy cover. I did feel, you know, just to acknowledge, just like the young writers feel like, oh, I gotta have the glossy cover, it gotta be on Amazon. And what I learned from my mentor, Marvin, and just understanding the Black arts movement is getting the material out, getting your narrative out, telling your story, that it doesn't matter if it's on Amazon. All you have to do is put it out and tell your story. So I feel like I just want to, just talk about that piece of just like some of the barriers of the next generation coming up and the opportunity, because we have Facebook that you can post your writing and it can get around the world with the click of a button. So also the self-publishing, do for self. Someone asked me, do you have a publisher? I guess Marvin would say Blackbird Press, but in that, I want to just say, he also showed me the steps to putting your work together, how to format, publishing, how to promote yourself, and doing for self. That all you need is a printer, and we have so many opportunities so much technology that you don't need a publisher. And I feel like, just this generation is kind of like waiting for people to give them something. And I feel like the Black arts movement didn't wait for a publisher to come. They didn't wait for nobody else to acknowledge you. They didn't wait for Facebook to say you got a certain amount of likes. They put the material out and share the counter narrative to what's happening. And I feel like I said, I kind of started off as just something that I do, but I feel like, more of a sense of purpose as to what I do. And what am I writing about? Is my writing going to liberate somebody? Is it going to touch somebody's heart? And I'm like, if I'm doing a poem and it hasn't touched nobody's heart, then I haven't done my job. If it hasn't healed somebody, I haven't done my job. Not just for people to just, that's good, snap, snap, or it goes to the beat with my poetry, and that it has to have a deeper meaning. And that's what that is the gift that the Black arts movement has given me, is just to do it. Just put it out there. You have to tell your story. And I feel like there's so many opportunities. So especially the young, the old, the writers, you don't have to wait for the glossy cover to get your stuff out there. Because I know Man Hugh Aim, he had his book, and he just had, he walk around, with his material. And he has evolved, but the point is that we have to start. And that we don't have to wait for nobody to co-sign. So that's the evolution of my work. And I said it's a zine, but it's a book, and valuing our work. That it doesn't have to be a 500 pages of worth of nonsense, that you can put 5 pages of the most potent writing together and change somebody's life.
Thank you. I basically started writing as also was to heal. And then I realized that in healing myself, I could also heal others, and decided to do that. My mom, the consummate educator, allowed me to go only 2 places growing up, the library or to church. And because I hated white supremacy, I didn't go to church. So I went to the library. And I started going to the library because there was this cute guy who lived on the way to the library. And I would get all dressed up and go, and then I would get into the library and sulk. And then I'd sit there a few minutes, and then I'd go home. Well, this wonderful woman, Miss Young's, Bayview, Hunters Point, 3rd Street Library. She said, "Who's forcing you to come here?" How do you know? You know how the attitude kicks in. And she said, "Let me show you something, little girl." And she took me to this room. It was about the size of this auditorium. She said, "Every book in this room is written by or about a black person." Of course, I was taught in school black people didn't do anything. We started at slavery. So of course I said, that's not true. So she went to every book and she pointed to those books. And I looked at every cover. I thought, wow, it's a black person, another black person. And I read every book in that library, which is how I ended up in college at 16. But then I continued to learn that there was more I needed to know. So I started working closely with some of our greatest scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Yosef Ben, and I traveled with them, and we went to the continent, and we studied, and I read all their books. And at some point I said to the group, how come we can't get one book with the entire chronology of our history in one book. And they all looked at me and in one voice said, "That's your job." So I took that job and I wrote that book. And the first one was called Recognizing and Resolving Racism. It was 500 pages long, gave the history from 3,700,000 BCE all the way to the 20th century. And people complained, "It's too heavy, it's too big." Reading wimps. So I wrote a smaller version of the book, but it still got the entire history in it. Because if we don't know where we came from and what we've been through, we will not survive this. We don't know we are at war. And if you don't know you are at war, there's no way you will ever win that war. And the biggest problem is a lot of our problem comes with the fact that we are constantly perpetuating our enslavement with the words we use. So it is so crucial that we use the correct words. I remember when I was growing up and I would hear about the guerrillas fighting, and I would think about who taught a gorilla how to fight? You know, serial killers, and I was thinking, well, why are the serials killing people? And because we are given words so that we do not understand, we do not evolve. So it's crucial that we stop using the language of the enemy, the colonizer, the enslaver, and we begin using words that actually reveal the truth. So you will never hear me say the Justice Department. It's the Injustice Department. You will never hear me say the education system. It's the miseducation system. We must be clear, because we wait for our children to grow up learning all these words the wrong way, and then we wonder why they're not revolutionaries. Because we haven't trained them to be revolutionaries, because we're not using the correct words around them. People used to say to me, when my daughters were little, their hair was very straight, and people used to say, "Oh, your daughters don't have good hair." I said, "Oh no, when it gets nappy, it'll be good hair." So we've got to be very clear about where we are. So I basically started writing because the ancestors put that task upon me. Our historians said that that is your job to do that. And I realized that a lot of times we have been taught not to want to read and write anymore. You know, we used to have to take handwriting in school. And remember, you had to work on your characters, because that's how you developed your character. Children don't do that now. They just press a little button. No one's working on the character. And Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop told us that there were only two types of people on the planet. When the people were evolving, you were either a civilized person or you were a barbarian. The Africans were the civilized people, and we educated the entire planet. And most of us don't know that history. So it behooved me to write that history. But I realized that the things that we remember the most are those little songs and things we learned way back in the day. 1, 2, buckle my shoe, 3, 4, Mary had, all those things, we still remember those. So I realized that when you put the words with a little rhyme and a little music, it'll stick in your head. So that's how I became a Djali, a griot, an oral historian who uses music, poetry, and dance to heal a people and a culture. So that's what I do. So if I have to pick up a trumpet and play it, I will. If I play a little djembe to make you listen, I will. If I have to get up and dance, whatever it's going to take, so that we eventually get to simply reading and writing, because if we don't document our lives and our history, we leave it to our enemy to do so. Absolutely. We all have a job and a purpose on this planet, and we must acknowledge that planet. They've got us looking for careers. Look for your purpose,
We're looking for a job,
which is much more important than your career.
Okay.
So it's how I got to be a writer, and here we are.
This is wonderful. The only reason I'm going to use the Marvin X's order to be a moderator, because that's what he does, orders us to do this stuff. So anyway, so we're going to take questions. We were told we had to, we got a few more minutes, and I would ask if people are going to ask a question, that you see there's 6 sisters up here. So one or some of us might answer, but try not to just make a statement just for the purpose of making a statement. Maybe you want to just ask quick questions so other people can, expound on it. Is somebody taking the question piece? Okay, thank you.
All right, I just want to say thank you, sisters, very much for your presence, your power. You've so educated me as a young black man, and I'm very grateful to be in your presence. Much love. This book is called The Conversation by Hill Harper, and it's about how black men and women can build loving, trusting relationships. So this is my question. I'm going to read a quote real quick, and it's not a statement, it's a statement to ask a question. In 1966, More than 84% of all black children were being raised in two-parent households. In 2006, just 40 years later, fewer than 33% of all black children were being raised in two-parent households. That is a precipitous 51% decline. We could blame it on the change in attitudes about marriage over the past 40 years, but that still would not explain why, in 2006, more than 80% of Asian American children, nearly 75% of white American children, and close to 70% of Latino children were being raised in two-parent households. So my question to the panel, the black family obviously is in trouble. What role do you think the black woman has to play in rebuilding and bringing back a strong revolutionary black family? Thank you.
I just want to make a quick statement about that because those kinds of questions, it's like, why are we 50% of the prisoners? Why do we have lack of education? They assume that the victim is guilty for the crime.
That's right.
So I want to get it straight. Do you think something's wrong with black people? Because if you don't, then let's talk about the conditions that created this. And whatever Hill Harper has to say about black love, that's nice. But the bottom line is, I don't think there's any role of women, and other people can comment, but I want to say this because it's very important, because there's this whole notion of something's wrong with us. The Asians
right.
came, there's
That's
nothing
right.
wrong with this. What's wrong with us? There's nothing wrong with
That's
us.
right.
There's something wrong with the scheme of
That's
things.
right. I want to remind us that, you could not simply just get older in African culture. You had to go through a rites of passage. You had to learn how to identify with and be responsible to yourself, your family, your community, your people, your nation. The reason we aren't nation building anymore is because we have forgotten that. You knew that everyone you met at a certain age had been through manhood training. You knew he was a real man. We don't know that anymore. You knew every female you met had been through womanhood training. She was a real woman. We have forgotten those realities. So therefore, we see ourselves in the condition we are in today. And every time I hear a woman saying something like, you the man in this family, he's a 3-year-old boy, that's a problem. Every time you hear a woman saying, I'm the man and father, and I'm the mother and the father, that's a problem. Thank you so much. Because it does not acknowledge the fact that I am a woman. And I am a woman because we know that in African culture, it is the yin and the yang. You can't have one without the other because men are men. So I acknowledge the fact that as a woman, in an African-American centered revolutionary woman in a Eurocentric culture, that I must be a revolutionary woman. And I must focus on all those things that raise revolutionary children, which are things that we do not do today. We're too busy trying to be part of the what is it, get with the Joneses and move it on up to the Jones. I don't even know what those things are. But we have to recognize that our role is to continue the culture. And once the European culture realized that, they started attacking the black woman. At first, they just attacked the black men. But they looked up and wondered, how is it that black people continue to survive and thrive? Because they finally realized that it is the woman who carries on the culture. It is the woman who is the first teacher and the educator. And now they have learned that if you want to destroy the black culture, black family, you must destroy the black woman. So now you have black women running around calling themselves B-word and being proud of it.
Okay, but let's have somebody else say something before I get too long.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that the latest article I wrote is called De Facto Feminism, and it's about black women being, all of us in this century, being in the past century, being sojourner truths, and we push and sometimes are pushed because of circumstances, because of the rottenness of the system we're in, to be very entrepreneurial, to be forward, to be progressive. And one example that I used is the Candy Lady. I don't know if many of you know about the Candy Lady in the projects. Okay, but she goes to the, to the Costco, to the Target, so forth, and buys goods right along with the Korean and the Asian and so forth. So, there are a number of ways that this underground economy which crosses legal, illegal barriers, exists. The young women who braid the hair, kitchen beauticians. There's a lot of things going on, and that we need to pay attention to some of those things and try to understand how people are trying to make it not to be like the Joneses or to be like the Huxtables, but as a matter of rank survival.
Well, say something? Sorry. I think we need to, and this is when it comes down to the power of language and understanding and analysis. We have the twin evils, white supremacy and capitalism. And if we're not teaching each other about that and learning about that, then we attack each other. And understanding that we have, as a people, as an African people, have been the lightning rod for capitalism and, of course, for white supremacy. So we have been the ones who've been easily discarded in the labor market. And that's been going on for several decades as jobs have moved out abroad and whatever have you. So if we don't understand, and it's a process. I mean, I'm still learning. You know, I'm in a group called League of Revolutionaries for a New America, where we talk about the class system and white supremacy. And there's a lot of talk about what's happened in the Communist Party and black folks. So these are things I'm still learning, but we have to understand that we need to not fight each other, but fight capitalism. And that may be a broad, scientific, long-reaching sort of idea, but we have to talk, okay, if I'm out of a job, do I attack you and attack me? Or we attack each other? No. Let's talk about what's really happening in the labor force and what's happening and what's not happening for black people.
But the simple answer to your question is, our role is to continue to love our children. That is what we need to do. And because that is what is going to see us through all of the dysfunction of the family in general. Yeah, of course. So don't fall for the blaming of the victim kinds of mechanisms that is happening, telling you that, you know, a one parent household is not going to produce healthy children, when it is better for children to be raised by one loving parent or two loving parents of the same sex, you know, rather than a dysfunctional family that has a male and a female in it and it's not working. Okay, so that's the main thing, is our role is to continue to love our children as black women always have.
Let's take another question. You're not getting to talk back. Who's got a question? Is somebody on this side got a
Oh,
question?
no, I had a question.
Somebody got the mic, I don't hear it.
I have a question.
Okay, well, you just pass the mic along. Might be somebody on this side. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, my question was,
I just make note that Hill Harper plays the police on TV. Go ahead.
my question was, how do you empower and enlighten people? When I say people, I'm speaking specifically about blacks that is enslaved when they don't even think or realize that they're enslaved.
That what?
That don't realize they're
How do you empower and enlighten?
darkened.
You know, I just would like to say it one more time. There's this notion that there's something wrong with black people, okay? And I want to just emphasize, because I make a big statement about this, like, oh, what's wrong with us? Like we're unenlightened, simple-minded, backward. We have been enslaved, in fact, okay? Everybody wasn't a runaway slave. Just like right now, everybody ain't involved in no revolutionary activity. Although we having a nice conversation about revolution, we ain't all revolutionaries in this room. So let's not talk about how we need to enlighten these ugly, ignorant people. Let's talk about how we might want to create a movement that actually does something more than have a conversation at Laney College. That's where I go.
We've been, all the things that we've been talking about are the tools that are possible to educate, transform, and empower. We need to use every means at our disposal to be able to do that.
I think when I was at the peer group for recovery to white supremacy, like Dr. Nathan here, he talked about moving from the philosophical down to the basic heart, spirit, soul connection. I feel like that's what inspires. It's not just like, you can spill the facts about Timbuktu, but being honest about your experience and healing it to, feel it to heal it. And acknowledging and honoring our pain, honoring all of our experience. So I feel like just getting to that place within yourself is going to inspire people, not being philosophical about it, but standing in your own truth.
That's right. Any questions on this side?
How you doing? Yeah, very inspired just to see just the amount of education and just the different journeys that you guys have taken. Ma'am, with the beautiful gold chain right there, I was inspired by your journey from dance to education. And I was wondering, with dance and for me, dance and sports is something I could easily gravitate towards. I could do for hours. Education could be a little bit more drudgery for me, right? So the whole journey from like getting in the zone and doing something that you're passionate about and transitioning into education, I think that'd be really great to hear you expound on that a little bit.
Well, it's all about, I think one of the sisters said, instead of thinking about a career, think about your purpose. Yeah. And if one begins to examine oneself and to really realize, why are you here? Why am I here in this time and space? What purpose am I supposed to serve by being here? If you ask yourself those kinds of existential questions, then whatever you do is going to be a tool in order to be able to accomplish whatever you think that purpose is. So I could easily move from dance into education because, as I was trying to explain, when I was dancing, I felt that's what I was doing anyway. So, and my mind was never separate from my body. I was always thinking, feeling, and intuiting as I was moving to the music or the poetry, because I used to do improv dance to Ntozake Shange's poetry in bars and theaters and any place that we could get an audience. So it's about finding purpose and then being willing to do the hard work that it takes to build your skills to be able to serve that purpose in the best way that you can, to fulfill your time for being here. I think it was Shirley, the first black woman to run for president, Shirley Chisholm. She said, service is the rent that we pay for taking up space.
That's
here.
right. That's right.
Okay? So just realize that we all have a purpose, and the highest purpose is to serve, and then if it takes you going into that library and reading every book that it took to be able to get better at your skills, do it. Do the hard work that it takes.
Because it's 4 o'clock, Marvin's standing over there. I know he must have something to say. But he ain't gonna let us go if he don't say something. But that's why we love Marvin. And I want to say on behalf of this, if that's your protege, you've done a great job. That might be the best thing you've ever done.
I have a few students in the house.
Okay, excuse me.
I got a few students, but Aries is one that's got that New York spirit, and she came here with that New York spirit. I thought I was a hustler. She used to put me to shame. She'd stop the cars on the street, on Market Street, make them stop and give her a donation. I ain't gonna do that, But I just want to say, I came from a strong black woman, so I love strong black women. So I'm just honored to be here. I'm honored that y'all are here, and I want to just thank the president of Laney College. Is she in the house? Where's the prez at? Where's the prez? Where's she at? She's up there. There she is, Elnora T. Webb. And she's the reason we in here with the Black Arts Movement Conference. And so she backing us, and so we gonna back her because we heard she got some problems over here, and we want to help her, and we want her to help us because it's a community here. You know, it's you help me, and I help you. You know, that's the kind of East Coast spirit, but the California got to get into it. You know, it ain't no one-way thing. So we gonna thank these powerful women here. Give them a hand. Give them a hand. Give them a hand. Yeah. Black Arts West. Black Arts West. Thank you.